Okay, so let's say that you've now been revising your story. You've asked other people for feedback, you've done self-evaluation, you've made a chart or a list, and you've done everything that you can to revise your story, and you've gone back and you've reworked it, whether you use a computer or whether you write it longhand. Now comes the last step, which is editing. So in another video, I talked about the difference between revising and editing, and I recommended that you don't really worry too much about editing until you get pretty far along with your revision, which is now. So here are some things that you should do when you're actually looking at the editing stage of your story. Number one, read your story out loud. Okay, maybe it's a long story. Take your time. Do a little bit every day. Listen to yourself reading it out loud. Are there some parts where you're stumbling and the words are kind of hard and they're getting, maybe some of your sentences need to be shorter? Are you repeating yourself? Do you use the word look 3 times on a page? I used to do that. Do you use the word very too often? Do you use the word just too often? Look for some of those words that you're using a little too often and see if you can't cut some of them out. Same thing with punctuation. A lot of people, myself included, used to use too many exclamation marks. Don't use too many exclamation marks. See if you can get some of them and take them out. So those are some things that you'll notice if you read your story out loud. Reading out loud takes more time than reading silently, and you'll probably notice things that you didn't notice another way. Second thing that you should do is look for your verbs and look for strong verbs. If you're using verbs like is, was, am, think about other verbs that are more active that you can use. Or even if it's a common verb that you use a lot, like walk or run. I certainly use those a lot because Fenway is always on the move. Think about all the different ways that you could say walk or run. I have huge lists of words like romp and scamper and spring and rush and burst and bolt and charge. I have like 50 different ways that I can say that a character is walking or running or moving or jumping or hopping or leaping. Those are all, more specific words. I mean, did Fenway, kind of run across the room, or did he dart, or did he, did he hurry across the room? I mean, there's all different ways that you can describe what your character's doing, and you can even say how they're doing it by choosing a verb. Instead of saying that he walked quickly or he ran fast, you could say he raced. So with one word, you can get rid of, using those 2 words. And so that makes your writing stronger. So think about ways that you can, replace your verbs. And if you're using adverbs, which quickly, a lot of ly words are adverbs. So if I'm walking quickly, if I'm doing something quickly, a lot of times you could take out the quickly and replace it with a verb that means the same thing. Those are always going to strengthen your sentences. And then finally, what I would do when I'm editing is I look for actual mistakes. So a lot of times I think it's easy to fix the mistakes. I try to save them for the end because they're easiest things to fix. And because if I'm doing a lot of rewriting, like if I'm rewriting the whole scene, then what's the point of fixing the mistakes in the first draft if the whole thing is going to change? So it is kind of like making extra work for yourself. So I don't do that. I save it for last. I look for things like spelling, grammar, punctuation, and those are things that your friends who are reading it for you, they can do that because sometimes we miss things. So if someone wants to proofread for you, take them up on that offer. That's a really, really good thing to do. So those are the main ways that I would suggest that you edit your work. And then I'm going to give you a totally optional way. This is something that I do. I type my stories on a computer, but even if you write it longhand, here's what I do. I take my whole document, I print it out, even though it might be 100, 200 pages, and I retype the entire thing. Doesn't that sound like a lot of work? But I find that if I do that, I make myself retype the whole thing. I end up making changes as I do that, and I make my sentences tighter. In other words, if I said something in a way that was long and clunky, I tend to make it shorter and tighter and more precise. Or if it's repeated, I think, well, I don't need that. So as I'm retyping, I tend to make my manuscript stronger. It's a lot of work. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to do it. I'm just offering it to you as an idea because it's what I do myself and I believe in it and I think it works. So whatever works for you, try that and see if it helps you strengthen your manuscript. And remember, editing is, the last thing that you can do, but it's kind of like you've done all the work and then you're just polishing it up at the very end, or wrapping it in beautiful wrapping paper, something like that. So when you think about it that way, rejoice, because cleaning up those little things means that you're almost done.